I paid for the whole vacation. The villa, the flights, the tours, every coconut-scented detail. And 2 days before takeoff, my son texted me one line. "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it just her family." So I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I froze the travel fund. They boarded the plane. The card didn't. Before I tell you the rest, I want to ask you to subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Here we speak the truths no one else will. If you've ever been left out of a family photo, or forgotten after a lifetime of giving, this space is for you. Now let me tell you what happened, because it didn't start with that vacation. It started in Tulare County, California, sometime in the spring of 1952. I was raised in a house with cracked windows and tired floorboards. The kind of house where you could hear every footstep and every disappointment. My mama never raised her voice, but her silence could blister. Daddy was harder than the land he worked. He believed girls should be quiet, and women should be grateful. When I was 7, I learned to make biscuits before I learned to spell my name in cursive. At 10, I was cleaning my brother's messes and trying not to flinch when Daddy slammed doors. My sister left the day she turned 16. I remember the screen door swinging shut behind her and Mama not saying a word. When Daddy died in a farm accident, there wasn't much grief. Just a deep, exhausted quiet. I was 13, and already worn out. By 16, I was working at the local diner. Men with dust-covered boots would slide quarters into my apron and wink without waiting for eye contact. One of them, a man named Earl who worked with my uncle, used to sit in the back booth and call me sweet thing. He'd wait until closing. Said he wanted to walk me home. Said it wasn't safe otherwise. He was the first man I ever learned to fear in silence. One night he followed me all the way to the porch. Mama was already in bed. He touched my wrist, just enough to make my stomach turn. Said I owed him a smile. I never told anyone. Because back then, in small towns like ours, men didn't get blamed. Girls did. And when I finally left, married Henry, moved 2 counties over, built a life brick by brick, I swore I'd never be the kind of mother who made her daughter feel alone in a house full of people. And for a while I wasn't. Henry was a good man. A mailman who brought home bruised apples for the kids and rubbed my feet when I didn't ask. We had one daughter, Elaine. Bright-eyed, quick-witted, with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes in a summer storm. I raised her with everything I never had. Home-cooked meals, warm towels out the dryer, bedtime stories with happy endings. I made sure she knew love didn't have to come with fear. But children grow. And sometimes, they forget. When Elaine married Curtis, I tried to stay out the way. He was polished, quiet, said all the right things, but his smiles never quite reached his eyes. Over time, I saw the little changes, the way Elaine flinched when he corrected her, the way she called less and less. Still, I kept giving. That's what we do, isn't it? We tell ourselves it's just a phase. That we'll be invited next time. When they had children of their own, I thought I'd finally be welcomed back in. And for a while, it seemed that way. I babysat. I baked. I sent cards for every school play and every lost tooth. Then came the idea for the trip. Elaine called one evening, her voice buzzing with excitement. "We want to take the kids to Hawaii. Curtis says we could all use a break. And Mom," she said, "it wouldn't be the same without you." I cried after that call. In the laundry room, where no one could hear. I opened the mason jar I'd been saving for years. Called it my someday fund. I cashed it in, opened a travel account in my name, and booked it all: villa, airfare, snorkeling, even a private chef for one dinner. Every detail carefully chosen with love. 2 days before departure, I was sitting at my kitchen table, wrapping tiny travel kits for the grandkids. I'd labeled each one by hand. My phone buzzed. "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it just her family. You've already done your part by paying. No call. No apology. No thank you. Just that." I didn't text back. I didn't cry. I walked to my den, opened my laptop, and logged into the travel fund. My name was the only one on the account. No cosigners. No shared access. Just me. I hovered over the Freeze Account button. And I clicked. No one knew. The next morning, I got a voicemail. "Hey Mom, weird thing at the airport. They're saying the card won't go through. Can you check?" Another. "Rental car isn't confirming either. Can you see what's going on?" And another. "Mom, the flight is about to board. We need this fixed." The kids are freaking out. But I didn't reply. I sat on the porch with my tea. The wind chimes swayed softly. I didn't feel bitter. I felt clear. I watched as the funds came trickling back into my account over the next few days. One refund after another. And I realized I had spent a lifetime trying to buy my way into love. Baking it. Booking it. Bending myself to fit where no one had made space for me. But love built on obligation isn't love. It's debt. And I don't owe anyone anymore. That week, I made 6 phone calls. Carol, who hadn't left the county in 40 years. Beverly, who nursed her husband through ALS and never once complained. Louise, whose grandkids never call. I booked the same villa. This time in my name alone. No hashtags. No matching shirts. Just 6 women, one house by the sea, and the kind of laughter that doesn't ask permission. We cooked together. Walked barefoot in the surf. We lit candles each night, not for men who left us, but for the girls we used to be. On the last night, I stood at the edge of the water and whispered the words I never thought I'd say. "I'm not sad anymore." I let the tide take it. The next morning, a message came in. "Mom, can you at least return part of the deposit? We're in a bind." But I didn't reply. Because kindness without respect turns into expectation. And I am done being expected. If you're still watching, thank you. Truly. If you've ever been forgotten after giving your best, left off the list after paying the cost, then I hope this story held your heart a little. Please subscribe to Gram Diaries. We don't just tell what happened. We remember who we are. Be too. I didn't cry when the call started. Not even when Nathan's voice cracked in that 4th voicemail, the one where he whispered, "Mom, please, they're boarding." I just stood by the window, watching the morning light spill across the tiles like it had done every day for 40 years. I stirred my tea slowly. 1 spoon, then 2. The way James used to. Like you were painting a circle on the surface of your own silence. The phone buzzed again. This time it was Tanya's number. I let it ring. You see, when you've lived long enough to bury your husband, long enough to watch your children fall in and out of themselves, you begin to understand that silence has weight. And mine? Mine had grown teeth. I hadn't always been like this. Once I would have bent, would have melted into forgiveness at the sound of their voices. But this time, something inside me held firm. Because this wasn't about one vacation. This was about years of being slowly erased. Scrubbed out of birthdays, out of plans, out of pictures, until all that was left of me was a signature on a check. A wire transfer. A wallet wrapped in wrinkles. And the hardest part wasn't even the exclusion. It was the assumption that I'd stay quiet through it all. Let me tell you something, child. When a mother's love gets twisted into convenience, and that convenience is no longer needed, what's left behind isn't just pain. It's clarity. Cold, sharp, and unforgiving. That morning, I baked. I pulled out the old cast-iron skillet, the one I hadn't touched since James passed. I greased it with the leftover bacon fat I kept in a jar under the sink, because habits like that don't die, even when everything else does. And I made cornbread. Sweet, with a little bit of honey. Just like Mama used to. I baked while the phone rang. I mixed while they begged. I waited while they floundered. Then I took the skillet out, let the steam curl up and kiss my face, and I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once helped Nathan with his algebra, where we carved pumpkins together, where I taught him how to tie a tie the week before his high school graduation. And I ate a slice. Slowly. No television. No music. Just the sound of my own breathing and the voicemail icon flashing like a heartbeat on the phone I refused to touch. By noon, the airline had emailed a declined payment notice. Then the resort followed, cancellation confirmed. The car rental company sent their refund. One by one, the trip unraveled at its seams, every stitch sewn by my hands, now gently unthreaded by my choice. I didn't tell anyone. Not Carol from church. Not Beverly, who stops by with sweet tea on Sundays. Not even the mailman who always asked how my grandkids were doing. Because this was mine. My secret. My stand. And in that stillness, I started to breathe differently. I went into the garage that afternoon, where the dust clung to everything like regret, and I pulled out the old blue suitcase I hadn't used in years. I opened it, half expecting the smell of mothballs and memory. Instead, I found the travel shirts I'd printed for the trip. Family is Forever, Summer 2023. All 9 of them, carefully folded by size. I ran my hand across the smallest one, the one meant for Olivia. Her favorite color was pink, but I'd chosen purple to match the lei flowers I imagined her wearing. She would have looked beautiful in it. She always did. Sweet child. None of this was her fault. So I folded her shirt and set it aside. I kept her postcard too. The one that said, "Aloha Grandma. Can't wait to see sea turtles." It would stay on my fridge. But the rest? I packed them back into the suitcase, alongside the candles I had bought for the ocean memorial, the sunscreen bottles I had labeled by hand, the t-shirts, the photo of James. I zipped it all up and wheeled it back into the garage. Because not all trips happen the way we plan them. Some take you places you didn't expect, like back to yourself. That night, I opened a new notebook. The first page I titled, "People Who've Never Asked for Anything." I thought of Shirley, who still sends me handwritten cards every year. Of Deborah, who fixed my porch steps last spring without even asking. Of Margaret, who lost her son in a car crash and brings me fresh peaches every July because she says it makes her feel close to someone again. I wrote their names in blue ink. Slowly. One letter at a time. Then I circled them. Because if I was going to plan a trip now, it would be for them. For women who knew what it meant to carry others. To be overlooked. To hold pain like porcelain and never let it break. The next morning, I got a text from Nathan. Just one sentence. "Mom, I know you're angry. But please, think of the kids." I stared at it for a long time. And then I deleted it. Because what he didn't understand, what so many don't, is that thinking of the kids doesn't mean funding their parents' cruelty. It means modeling strength. It means teaching by example that love isn't obligation. It's choice. And I chose me. By sunset, my porch was quiet again. A soft breeze rolled through the chimes. That same old wind James always said sounded like God clearing his throat. I rocked gently in the chair he built me on our 25th anniversary. I thought about forgiveness. How it doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like boundaries. Sometimes it looks like a bank account full of unspent devotion, finally redirected toward the ones who deserve it. And sometimes it looks like sweet cornbread on a quiet morning, made not for them, but for you. So I'm telling you now, if you've ever been left out, if you've ever been used up and set aside, if you've ever mistaken being needed for being loved, I see you. And maybe it's time we stop waiting for seats at tables we helped build. Maybe it's time we build our own. If this story touches a place in your chest you've tried to ignore, if you've ever been erased and had to write yourself back in, then join me here, on this porch, on this channel. This is Gram Diaries. And I've got more stories to tell. Stick around. Because the quietest women, we remember everything. I woke the next morning with the sunlight laying stripes across the hardwood floor, like the world itself was telling me it hadn't forgotten me. I stretched slowly, feeling aches in joints I sometimes forgot I had, and I remembered the weight of all that had happened. The phone was silent on the kitchen table. No voicemails, no messages begging for explanations. Just stillness, the kind that tastes bittersweet. I poured coffee into my chipped ceramic mug, the one Nathan used to bring me on Sunday mornings. I held it against my chest, savoring the warmth, letting it ease some of the tightness in my heart. This was the moment I realized I didn't need them to ask me to stay. I didn't need their invitations anymore. I needed to invite myself to someone who'd been waiting patiently all along, me. I gathered my notebook, the one I'd started listing names in. People who've never asked for anything. I reread the names carefully. Shirley, Deborah, Margaret. They weren't just names, they were lifeboats. Their kindness didn't come with strings. Their love didn't vanish when convenience called. So I made my choice. If I was going to spend the money, if I was going to go somewhere, I wanted company that understood what it meant to truly see me. Within an hour, I was on the phone with the travel agent again. This time, to my own surprise, I booked a trip. A 1-week retreat to Yosemite. Not Hawaii. Something closer to home, but not the same old landscape. 6 women, 3 cabins, 1 lifetime stretch. Nature would do the rest. They'd been surprised when I told them. Various forms of disbelief. Why me? You? Are you sure? Cracked over the phone. I told them softly, yes. I'm sure. Because I matter. The preparation felt different this time. I went to the thrift shop and bought warm socks and a sturdy raincoat, honest, functional things. I packed a photo of James and tucked it gently in my jacket pocket. I wrote a note. For the ones who should have loved me. And I wasn't doing it quietly. This time it would be loud in the way that sunlight is loud, inescapable, beautiful, undeniable. A week later, I found myself behind the wheel of my old Chevy, the one James named Bluebird. We hadn't driven much since he passed. I'd parked it in the driveway, the engine silent, our shared radio collecting dust. But I started it that morning, and it purred like a cat. I smiled, feeling something like freedom for the first time in years. We wound through the canyons, pine trees flickering past like church candles. I kept the windows down, breathing in the smell of earth and evergreen, the way it reminded me of childhood when summers meant swimming holes and barefoot freedom. My cabin mates were behind me, singing off-key to old country songs, laughter slipping out with each verse. We pulled into camp mid-afternoon. A map showed a trio of cabins in a clearing overlooking a creek. I stepped out, my legs shaky, unused to this kind of boldness. But the air steadied me. All around, granite cliffs soared and the creek whispered urgency. Speak truth, live now. That night, we gathered around a fire pit. The crackle pulled words out of me, honest ones I'd swallowed decades ago. I told them about the trip that wasn't, the hands I folded, the gifts I wrapped, the hopes I hung in Hawaiian sunsets. I told them how they left me behind, how they thought absence was enough. But more than that, how letting me go taught them more about me than staying ever could. Shirley rested a kind hand on my arm. Deborah raised a toast to quiet rebellions. Margaret simply nodded, tears in her eyes. We talked into the night. About love and betrayal. About holding space for pain and still finding room for joy. About growing up in dusty towns where silence was safety, and how sometimes silence is the loudest scream. In the mornings, I hiked alone. I followed streams and listened to my footsteps crunch against pine needles. I carried James's photo in my pocket. And each day, I wrote in my notebook. I remembered how to be seen. Every sentence felt like liberation. On the day before departure, we sat on a rock ledge overlooking a waterfall. Water roared down the cliff in thunder. I closed my eyes, felt the spray on my face. I pictured Nathan standing beside me, asking why I left him out. I let the water wash over that old question. Why? I thought. And then answered with the roar. Because I needed to be found. That afternoon, we packed up. The cabins emptied. The creek would run without us. But something inside me carried forward. When I arrived home, the house felt different. I opened the door and inhaled deeply. The dusty radio still sat on the counter. I turned it on, old songs filtered through. Steel guitar, low voices singing, "I'll be here when you get home." I smiled. I'd come home and I was here. I placed James's photo back on the mantel, the one I'd given thoughtful polish to before I left. I placed a second copy on the mantel beside it, our twin flames, two places to hold the meaning of home. In the kitchen, I set fresh flowers in a vase. I wrote a letter to Nathan and his family, not angry, just real. I told them I was all right, that I was safe, that their silence had helped me remember something I'd nearly forgotten, that absence can teach you presence. I sealed it and set it on the entry table. I didn't send it right away. Maybe I never would, because this story isn't about shaming them. It's about showing up for me. It's about leaving breadcrumbs not for them, but for anyone who's hidden in corners waiting to reappear. You know, I never intended to tell this story. Not like this. Not with this much breath. But sometimes a memory becomes overdue. It clenches at your chest until you finally speak its name. And I waited, because silence felt safe. Easier. But safe isn't always right. And comfortable isn't always true. I tell this now 86 years, remembering 1,000 good mornings and a few too many heartbreaks, because some truths only find voice late. Because sometimes, the only way to stand up straight in the mirror is to first refuse to sit down and shrink. To anyone watching, if you've ever given your heart and been treated like pocket change, if you've ever hoped your presence was enough and it wasn't, you are not your absence. You are far more. Whether your heart has broken once or 1,000 times, there is light waiting at the back of that darkness. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Legacy doesn't always look like bloodline or birthright. Sometimes it looks like a single journey, a reclamation of peace, of self-worth, of the chance to walk away from the table you built and build a campfire in the woods instead. If this spoke to something tender inside you, Stay with me. Like, comment, subscribe. Share your quiet rebellions. Because when we tell our stories, we shine a candle for someone else in the dark. I am Marilyn Rose Monroe, once wife, mother, grandmother, and now simply someone who remembered where to stand and how to rest. Thank you for listening. May your next step be lighter, your next sunrise kinder, and may you always find your worth, even when the world forgets to remind you. This is closure, and also new beginnings.